how do you grow as a salesperson? How do you grow as anything, as any profession, any part of your life? Never mind selling. It's this tiny little step outside of our comfort zone. Now, to get into that optimal state, that flow state, that is the key element, is hyper focus and just a tiny bit step out of your comfort zone. It doesn't have to be huge. Now, a lot of people, especially on YouTube and the internet, want you to go from the couch to a 50-mile long endurance run. And I don't know the point of that. To prove that it's possible? Okay. But what we really want to do is just every day get out of our comfort zone, just the tiniest bit, and then rest, recover from it, not be outside of it 8 hours a day. I'm sure you've had the experience at least once in your life of going way outside your comfort zone and you find out it's no big deal. It may be a big deal while you're doing it and right before you do it, but afterwards you're kind of relieved. I remember a friend of mine, we were both kind of anti-roller coasters, and we made a pact that we were going to go and ride the roller coaster. And we were both nervous going on it, little babies, little wimps, getting on it, and it was scary. But then afterwards, it was this bag or this knapsack had been lifted off our shoulders. We had gone way outside our comfort zone. And, if that works for you, do it. But if you want to grow, you have to get outside of it. Just a tippy toes. The problem is if you don't get outside of it, that comfort zone shrinks. It doesn't grow. You have to kind of push against it, recover from it, push against it in a different way, and become a little bit better. And if we don't, we become a little bit worse every day, and we then start blaming somebody else. But once you've kind of gotten into that zone, you make that call that you've been putting off, you extend yourself online, you put out a piece of content, and you suffer the trolls. I mean, if you ever want to see a bunch of trolls, look at the comments on my posts. You can say the most positive, neutral thing imaginable, and somebody's going to come up with a reason why it's the worst thing that ever came across. They're going to misunderstand it, they're going to take it the wrong way, and we have to suffer from it. And sales is a lot like that because we've got to start where the other person is and build them up. Okay, let's get into the interview. If you're in the courses, make sure you're checking out the one-on-ones and the office hours and attend the office hours as often as you can. The camaraderie and the energy and the excitement of people having success with this is phenomenal. And all I see is more of the same stuff on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Make it personalized. Personalized spam is still spam. Relevant spam is still spam. You have to start where people are. Most people are not even aware of the problem that you solve. So talking about a solution to a problem that they haven't admitted to, it's not worth it. And what's different about these courses, because you've got other options, I know that, is that at first they're with a real sales rep, somebody who sold his whole career, not just at one company that failed, but it's 12 startups where I didn't have any marketing, where you had to bootstrap. They gave you a laptop and said, go to it. And this is even before we had all the data on LinkedIn and stuff and the internet. Now we have too much data, and we have to sift through it and make sense of it. And it's hours and hours of great content. The lessons aren't that much, meaning that you can consume them, but very quickly and start having immediate results. And the people who buy into it from the beginning get the fastest results. A lot of people need to learn. They fight it a little bit at first. And I go, just give it a chance. Put half hour a day into it and see what you get. And then people get the whole calendar filled up. And it's not about knowledge. It's about skill. And it takes a while to develop these skills outside of your little comfort zone. But the results that you get compound. These are lifelong skills. Your ability to get a meeting or get into a company that you want to in a systematic way that's not about pitching, not about cold calling, about having a conversation. Because commercials, no matter how entertaining and outrageous and gimmicky, they might get your attention, but do they build trust? It's not the attention economy. It's the trust economy. Because getting someone's attention is worthless unless they believe what you're saying. And they only believe what you're saying because they trust you. All right, Brian, let's get into the interview. Here we go. Hey, Lori, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Lori Hopper, 31 years old. I have been
How tall are
in
you?
sales. Yeah, right. 5'3". It depends though. After I close a sale, I'm about 6 foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got started in sales. Gosh, I was probably, I think it was about 9. I was in like 3rd grade. My mom, so I come from a family of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So one of my mom's jobs when I was growing up was she was a director for Pampered Chef, so the kitchen tool company. And they had this, every year they have like something that you could work for, like a trip. And so that year was Disney World. So I really wanted to go to Disney World. So I took her catalog to my 3rd grade class and sold one of the parents on having a show. And then my mom ended up doing a little over $1,000 in sales. And just for some reference, she usually averaged about 500 to 1,000 a month. So one show, $1,000 in sales. And we went to Disney World. So after that, it was history.
Yeah. So you immediately had that connection between effort and reward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that got me addicted to the immediate gratification of sales.
But after you studied marketing in college,
Yep.
did you look at that as the same as sales, or did you understand the distinction then?
Yeah. So one thing I feel like having the marketing background has really helped me is that I'm kind of able to see past like the surface.
Yeah.
So sometimes I can't turn it off. My boyfriend hates it sometimes, but I really want to see kind of what's going on inside and why that person made the decisions that they made. Um, right now, I'm currently in training to get my certified professional coach accreditation. And I jumped into that because I felt like when you break it down to different personalities of how people buy, I really struggle with analytical personalities. Like if I come to you and I say, this product is $100 you're paying now, you upgrade, you can pay 80. To me, that's a no-brainer. I don't spend time on that decision. So it's always been difficult for me to sell to analytical people. So for example, and we're talking C-level. So I have to learn how to sell to a CFO or to an operations manager. I have to, I can't only sell to people who are naturally tenacious, maybe like a CEO. I have to be careful and understand that everybody thinks a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So with my marketing background, I feel like that allowed me to understand that there is something past the surface. And then I further wanted to continue my studies and really learn the different personality levels. So when necessary, I can drop down or drop up. There's no good or bad ones. They're all just are. And it helps me speak with that person on their level and understand what their heartburns are, why they are objecting. So then instead of telling them why they shouldn't be objecting, I can get on the same level as them.
And what persona are you most experienced selling to?
I would say I am most experienced in selling to the emotive aggressor type. So,
what role at the company?
what role? Yeah. I would say I am best selling to an owner, a CEO, somebody that has ownership. I'm also really good at finding who is kind of like who is the best person that's going to influence the decision maker.
Yeah.
So, and the hard part is, I learned the hard way of thinking that I was at the decision maker, but I wasn't, and then lost because what I told, this influencer, the message didn't get relayed correctly. So I do think that in order to be aware that there is an influencer and a decision maker, I think it's important to kind of point out both of those right away.
Well, I think there's also many different decisions,
Absolutely.
right? Because I think
Right.
we try to oversimplify it
Right.
by
Yeah.
thinking there's a single decision maker,
Right.
but even that owner probably references other people, not for,
Well,
you know,
it's so true.
yeah, looking for opinion.
Well, and that's a great point. Like, I recently switched careers this year, and before I accepted the offer, I called my dad. I'm 31 years old, but I called my father because I trust him. Just like I proposed to a client last week. He's the sole owner, sole decision maker. And he said to me, I'm going to go home and talk to my wife.
Right.
So you're so right. And sometimes it's not directly.
It's not direct. Yeah.
It's just, well, I wonder who they're, because you're right. Everybody loops their conversations and their thought process through somebody. So it's really important to find out who that is and make sure that the message that your decision maker is bringing back to the table is that they understood what you have to offer and there's no questions about it.
Yeah. Well, what was some of the stages you went through as a rep, as far as your skill set?
Yeah, I would say stages I went through. I used to be not very humble in the beginning. I thought I was the best. I thought I was the best and I had nothing to learn.
Yeah.
But through having different levels of management, and that was thankfully that was in my younger professionalism. So maybe like, I don't know, young 20s, we're all don't know what we're doing anyways. But what I really learned was one thing that I did really well was I take constructive criticism well. So although I wasn't doing the right things in the beginning or it wasn't a pattern of success, it was more some one-offs. I had a manager that kind of sat me down and said, okay, what is working and what is not? Because if we find out what's working, you can replicate it. And then also got me into management later on using that same type of thought process. So I would say that the skill set that has gotten to me where I am today is learning to take, really learning to understand that when people are criticizing you, if it's constructive to take it. So kind of like how I point that to myself is I say, would you take advice from this person? If you take advice from that person, then go ahead and take criticism. And if it's not constructive, tell them, hey, I'm kind of not on the same page. I want to get better and I want to learn. But what am I doing wrong here? The connection's not there. Something is not connecting. Can you help me connect it?
So you had a really good manager early in your
Yes.
career?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's pivotal to so many people's successes. They'll say, oh, I had this mentor, I had this person, or yeah. So
And I think that's missing for a lot of people today, because what most managers do is just do more of it.
yep.
And you're like, well, if it's not working and I do more of it, what does that get us?
Right. And what's funny is how come when we find something that works, when it starts working, we tend to slide back from doing it. It's almost like, oh, well, it's working, so I don't need to do that anymore. But we forget that, well, that's what was working.
Yeah.
So.
And what kind of allowed you to do that? Was there something in your background that gave you the self-confidence to take feedback without you
Yeah.
taking it personally and
Yeah,
hurting your
absolutely.
feelings?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, my parents are both entrepreneurs. I grew up we would sit around the dinner table and we'd talk about ideas
Yeah.
and which idea was going to make us richest the quickest. I remember, I remember my dad, it was right when Beanie Babies came out. I was probably like, I don't know, 8. My sister and I were really into it. We went to like Beanie Baby swap meets, unfortunately. But my dad said, why don't you girls create your own version of this? And so we made this thing called Alpha Pets. It was basically Beanie Babies, but in the shape of letters.
Yep.
And I distinctively remember that because that was kind of what showed me you can do anything you want. And if you jump and you fall, your parents are going to pick you back up. So since I learned that at a young age, although I never needed them to pick me back up, the fact that I always could was so important to me because I was able to take that leap of faith with, confidence isn't tangible, right? So you don't necessarily see it, but you feel it. So knowing that I was supported regardless if I made a mistake or not was huge for me because I took tons of risks when I was younger. I moved all over the country. in my late 20s in order to get the right role. In the beginning of my career, in my early 20s, I moved all over the state of Iowa and Illinois, so not the country, but I literally was like, here I am, mold me, put me where you want. And that's where I ran across, one of the best managers I've ever had. And that all ties back to the confidence my parents instilled in us when we were younger about if you have an idea, run with it. And as I've gotten older and I'm practicing this, the leadership coaching, I'm learning that there's typically 4 separate ways that somebody like falls into conflict. And so I'm realizing that a lot of the conflict that I was able to skip out on was because I did not have the doubt that I wouldn't be okay if I didn't make it.
Yeah, I mean that seems to come up quite often. People who do things outside their comfort zone, right around that college, post-college
Yep.
time frame, junior year abroad, or take a year off and travel, or try a bunch of different careers. Because when you're thrown into a different geography or travel a lot, it's almost 100% outside the comfort zone.
Absolutely. And, I moved to Vegas in 2016 for 2 years, and I was familiar with the area because I had vacation there, but I never had lived there. And so it was a very pivotal point in my growth and my maturity level, because I realized that while I had the confidence to do on my own, and again, it's not tangible, right? So when I got there, I was like, what's next? What do I do? And I couldn't call my parents to help me, right? Because I went there on my own. So I think on a key to kind of put onto with the confidence is that you also, once you know you have that confidence, you have to continuously build on it. And
Right.
so that way, when I had doubts, I could go back and say, okay, but you doubted yourself, when you took this promotion for this role and you were, and it's to this day, it's difficult for me to have difficult conversations with an employee. So that's something I'm working on. So I would go back to that and say, hey, but you got through that conversation, so you can do that this time. And so I think it's so important that when positive things happen in our life, that we create those as precedents. Um, but at the same side of the token, when negative things happen, I guess I have it right there, but I always say it takes one time to lose. And after that, you better learn every single time that you lose a deal, because if you lose it, you've lost all of the energy on it. But if you can learn from it, at least you can take it back and say, I'm not going to lose my next deal because I learned from this deal. So I think you can use that same thing with your confidence and with your current struggles that you go through, and using that to kind of almost fake the energy until you can get it on your own.
Yeah, I like that because you paid the tuition for that lesson, the lost
Right.
commission.
Right. Exactly. That's such a good way of putting it. It's I paid into this, so I'm going to get something out of it. And it might not be a signed deal, but it'll be a signed deal next time.
Right. And mark that lesson down. But because I
Right.
see reps make the same mistakes over and over again, because there's so many traps in selling.
Right. Right. Well, especially I was reading a document this morning, and um, this person, long story short, what the person was looking for a one-worded answer to rebuttal an objection, and somebody mentioned, a very long paragraph, and they went back and they said, telling me what you think is right only actually just upsets me more and pigeonholes me into a defense mechanism. If I can get on your same level and say, hey, this is why this is happening, this is what this is doing, kind of meet them where they are. I mean, same in personal relationships, right? Like if you constantly have that combative nature, there's no thing versus good and bad energy. It's all energy. So good and bad are just constantly doing this to each other. So if we just look and we say, okay, this wasn't good, but it wasn't bad, it just was. Let's work through that. What is that objection? How can we get there? How can we get to the root of where that objection is coming from? And it goes back to the other conversation about making sure that they deeply understand that, because when they go back and talk to their to their second opinion, their wife, their manager, their anything, they need to understand that the objection they overcame themselves, and it wasn't that the sales rep overcame that objection for them.
Right. And, I think when people try and overcome an objection, it usually means you're moving too fast. I think the judo, the go with the resistance, align with it, hear it out, find
Why
out what's
fight
going
it?
on. Yeah. You're
Right,
not going to
right,
win.
right, right. Exactly. You might as well you can't beat them, join them. So get on the same level and see where they're at.
Yeah. And how do you approach reps that you clearly see them doing something wrong, or they're frustrated, or they're not seeing something? There's a character flaw or a skills gap.
Yeah. So what I So I've been a management a few times in my career. And the thing that I continuously went back to was I do not like excuses. I do not like them. I try not to use them. Um, I have tried to take away from, I didn't have time to that, to that wasn't important enough for me to finish. What I tried to do so whenever I see, I'm not a manager now, but because by choice, but when I have a coworker, okay, that might be struggling with closing a sale or getting the right behaviors down. What I try to do is change their frame of mind and say, okay, instead of saying, well, I didn't make my 50 dials today because I ran out of time, start telling yourself, I didn't make my 50 dials because they're not important to me. And you very quickly will watch how your actions either are going to match what you're saying and you're going to burn out and fail, or you can say, wait a second, but I know that cold calls are important to me, but my actions aren't showing it. I think sometimes we have to take a step back and really say, are we doing what we're saying that we're doing inside? Everybody else's opinion is honestly irrelevant. If you do not believe in yourself and have the confidence to move forward, it's like walking into a presentation and thinking, they're not going to buy this. Well, then why are you wasting my time and your time? Why'd you waste any time putting any time into this presentation? So I think that confidence comes first, but you also have to self-check yourself. Like, are you really doing what you're saying you're doing? Are you really sending all those emails? Did you really email that guy until he never responded? Or did you just really email him twice? Or did you only cold call them 3 times? Did you really do everything you did to exhaust the option of saying, what I'm doing isn't working? Because until you did, you didn't.
You know,
It's simple.
I always say excuses are a lie that only you believe.
That's so true. It's so true.
No one believes them.
No. And nobody wants to. Like, and then I remember my mom was trying to get a pair of shoes for this wedding, and she kept saying, I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time. And I said, you have time. It just hasn't been important to you. And she was like, it is important to me. So I got to go get these shoes. And so it's funny how I don't know if you ever read the book, The Challenger Sale, but I think it's kind of like a new generation of sales where, let's challenge each other. Like how this kind of ties back into sales is in the beginning of my presentations, I've been reiterating before I present. I'm in a software sales and IT infrastructure, cybersecurity sales. So in the beginning, before the process, I've asked them, we've gone through discovery, we've kind of taken a picture of their network, what kind of threats, open doors that they're looking at, and how we can help them. And how I start my presentations is, let's go back to day one. You told me 3 things that you wanted to do. You wanted to, manage your network better, get some projects done that you've been putting off, and you want to have training for your employees for user awareness training. So then when I start my presentation, I go back and I reflect on those. This is what you told me that you wanted. Here are the 3 things. Here's my presentation. I have delivered what you've asked me. So that way, if they have an objection, I can challenge them and say, listen, you asked me to do these 3 things, and I brought you 3 of them, plus a little cherry on top. So if we're not on the same page here if you don't think that this is what's right for you. And I think sometimes we get a little nervous, kind of challenging the client because the customer is always right. But the customer is actually always the customer. If the customer says the sky is green and it's blue, they're not right, but they are the customer. And so they need to be treated with respect. Yeah. So I think that's why it goes back to, being able to challenge each other. And I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be challenged. And if I'm not challenged, I get bored.
Well, we want to defend ourselves. Your mom says, oh, yep. I don't have time. So she has this out.
Right.
But
exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like setting up a plan B so that I know that if I fail, well, I didn't have the time, I had to do X, Y, and Z. And that's why I couldn't do, what I said I would do.
A lot of people don't understand that change. That's what we're all selling at some level. Change and action.
Yeah.
And our subconscious mind only wants us to survive. Doesn't think beyond today.
Nope. Just we need you to stay alive and procreate if you're able to. Exactly. But that's it. And once you've done that, your brain's kind of like, hey, I kept you alive. And one thing I'm working through right now in my mind is thinking about if I look into something if I am too protective of certain things, and let's say if it's something I need to work on, Like I tend to get hyper focused on something, which can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing. My hyper focused on good sales practices and making sure I get my dials in, tracking my CRM activities, networking. But on the other side of it, if I find an issue, I can hyper focus on that. So now that I'm aware of that, what I try to do is kind of work backwards from it and say, okay, well, why was this important to you? Why did you think this way? And like you said, it always comes back to a frame of mind of if we told ourselves we can do this or if we told ourselves we can't.
Yeah.
It's always goes back to you, always. And it's back to that excuse. Was it valid? And did you do something with it? No, they're never valid.
It's always a lie. When someone gives you excuse, have you ever believed it?
No. And I
get them all day. It's like,
yes.
Something urgent in the family came up. I can't make it. It's like, no, you're incompetent, can't manage your time, and this wasn't important.
And this wasn't important to you. Exactly. Yeah. And my dad always said, if you can be 5 minutes late, you can be 5 minutes early. And I think it's, a simple kind of tie back to that and about just sales isn't as hard as we make it out to be. If we talk to people on their level, understand that there is an issue or find and show them the issue that they're having and then a solution to that issue and then a close. I mean, we could break it down in 15 seconds. I'm not sure why we make it so difficult because it is one of the hardest careers when it comes to managing your mind and managing your moods and where you're at, because it's difficult, right? We handle rejection all the time on a daily basis. And honestly, if you're not getting rejected, then you're not working hard enough because you will always be rejected.
Right.
So,
and what we call rejection,
it's right.
Yeah, we're probably moving too fast. We're talking about what we care about, not what they care about.
Right. I heard a good thing yesterday about small talk versus building rapport. And people don't want to talk about the weather. People don't, when you're jelly beaning with somebody, talk about what's relevant to them. Talk about something, and it's an art that I am still working on because sometimes I can go on tangents if I see, like I'm really aviation and love aviation. So if I go into someone's office and I see airplanes or anything like that, I can tell them what the airplane is and we can talk about it. And I have to be careful of stopping that or give yourself so many seconds and then use that to convert into the sales process, which I think, that comes with experience and wisdom, because many times I've fallen flat on my face and had silence. So it's all about taking what I learned, kind of, building myself up higher, starting from there, building myself up higher, starting from there. It's just that until you're where you need to be.
And how do you stop from kind of the backsliding?
Yeah, I think right. I think how to stop from the backsliding is what I've started to do is when I catch myself making excuses, sliding back into poor behaviors, I'm not sure if it's the best way to do it, but I kind of just cut myself off cold turkey. So a few months ago, I felt like I was spending way too much time on all my social medias. So maybe end of August, I deactivated Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat and solely focused on LinkedIn. Yeah. I only took, when I would scroll through LinkedIn at night, I made sure if I stopped and looked at anything that I commented on it, that I fully read it. Like, when they say 2-minute reads, 5-minute reads, I made sure to pay attention to that. And my awareness and following of really resetting what I can get from social media by just solely focusing on LinkedIn has been incredible. I mean, I have been following you for, I remember the first time I ever started following you was when you did a video, and it was on like, does it work when managers just constantly yell at their reps? Like, is it really going to work if you constantly say, well, it's having sales drop, it's not hard. You have this to do. You have this to do, like follow these rules. And I remember my boss at the time when I were watching it, and I was like, this is so true. And he was like, this is so true. I do this. And so I think it's about being able to accept that, hey, be humble about, I'm not doing what's right 100% of the time. So help me figure it out. I see that you're really good at business acumen. Could you help me with that? And I will help you with learning how to get the presentation part of the sales process down. So I think it's so important to reach out and.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people focus on just doing more.
Yep.
they're not really coaching. They're kind of like bouncing a ball back.
Right.
It's
Right.
like shaking that. Remember the magic ball? You shake it, and some random number came up.
Yep. Yep.
You
Exactly.
could have one for like sales leadership. Shake it, and it's like get back to work. Shake it.
Yep.
Take 5 minutes off.
Right. Right.
That's
Right.
not
Okay.
really.
You get
Yeah, you want to get deep with somebody. It's like
right. Well, and I think, if I think we as humans, like you said, we are kind of always on that defense mode, right? Like, whoa, this person's so like you could be in that fight or flight mode. You can accidentally put yourself into that by not practicing the right thoughts, you
that's the
know?
default. Yeah.
And so it's I tend to fight more than I flight. So for example, and what's cool is I've watched myself, and I have this journal in my iPhone that anytime I have any type of conflicting piece of information that's coming through my brain, and then I know I don't feel that way. This is really weird. What am I doing that I feel this way? I write it down. I go back and I basically research it on why I felt that way. I can go, and then that way I can level myself in when I feel that way again. So it really is truly. I've had so many less um, conversations go towards the fight or flight because I've recognized that I do that. And so instead, I realize, this is you doing it. This is your perception or your interpretation of what's going on in front of you true. Because if I don't see that there's any other interpretation, then my interpretation is wrong. Because we always have to look at things holographically, right? They have to know everything's multidimensional. We look at how I see you right now in this video, and how you see me is different than how I see myself in this video. So we have to start looking at deals, at relationships, at networking events, at deals that we lost, or anything that is more than one side of things. We have to start looking at them holographically.
I think right, because otherwise we just react to them. We get that
Yep.
knee-jerk reaction, which is the
Yep.
default. We have to.
Absolutely. And it's easy to do, right?
It's hard not to do, right?
Yes, it's just instantly. You'll
Yeah.
fall right into it. And you can even see yourself saying, why did I just say that? I don't want to say that. I don't want to fight with this person. I don't want to have a conflicting
Right.
opinion that's negative, because there is such thing as positive conflict. There
Sure.
is times that we
It's
have
a
to talk through
debate.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
constructive debate. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And those are the most productive ones because both people are getting at the root of what really matters.
Right. I mean, one of my best friends, we have vastly different political beliefs, and we're best friends. And this is probably, I think we can all say, one of the hardest years of elections
You
we've
think?
ever had in general. I don't want to say the word unprecedented because I can't say that
Oh,
word one more time. But we have vastly different on religious views. We have vastly different political views, and she is one of my best and greatest friends. She's my girl that I come to and I say, "Am I doing this right?" Same thing. Like I call my dad, and then she's next, and it's because we respect each other. We are confident in our opinions because we've researched them, which means that we're confident so we can hear some criticism, because I know there's more sides, and honestly it's allowed me to be a lot more open and view other side points, because I respect her so much. It's really hard not to respect her opinion, and we don't walk over each other. So you can have positive conflict. Absolutely.
was that the motive to kind of get into coaching? Was that
Yeah,
that kind of view of the world?
absolutely. And it really showed me, we can think our way out of anything,
Yeah.
which means we can think our way into anything. And if we realize where I think it's, really what I'm learning right now is find out where whoever you're trying to talk to, whether it's a guy you're trying to date, a deal you're trying to close, or a boss you're talking to about a promotion. If you find yourself and get on the same level they are personality wise, and I don't mean change your personality, but we constantly are like this with our emotions, right? So once you can control your emotions, you can use those for you. So you can say,
Yeah.
okay, I know that when I get in this mindset, I am unstoppable, and I have a 7-hour presentation to prepare for. I'm getting in that mindset, where I might not want to be in that mindset when I cold call, because I'm too driven. Cold calls, I have to be constantly changing what's in front of me, changing
Yeah.
my research, changing the person every 3, 4, 5 minutes. So yeah, I definitely think that's what wanted to get me into coaching, because I wanted to help myself. And then I realized I learn best by teaching. So it's kind of selfishly why I got involved with it and why I wanted to coach. And who knows if I'll ever do anything with it. But honestly, to me, that's irrelevant because I just want the experience and I want the expertise to be able to have these conversations with you, with anybody at all, let alone myself, and get the deals that I want, right? And get the earn the new relationships and not doubt when I have these crazy ideas and run with them.
Cool. Hey, Lori, I really appreciate your time today. Where
Yes.
can people go to connect and follow you?
Yeah. I have a LinkedIn. It's I believe it's just Lori-Hopper. So
Yeah.
linkedin.com/Lori-Hopper. And then I also have Facebook and Instagram. I did reopen those. They're more kind of my fun stuff, but I would say LinkedIn is the best place to get. I will definitely update on. I start my leadership time tomorrow, so my first module is 3 straight days of 10-hour days, and I could not be more excited. So I'll make sure to update that on LinkedIn as well.
Think about if you were any kind of athlete. When does it become fun? It's right on that edge of knowing that you can do it and testing it. It's really playing with somebody who's better than you, somebody who's challenging your ability, your skill, and testing you a little bit. And then when you pass that test, it feels good. Again, you may not win every time, but isn't that where the fun is? And I think if you don't like that, then you might want to either change that view or ask yourself, is sales your thing? Because sales, by its nature, is a test every day. It's a test of willpower, of optimism, of focus, of empathy, all of these skills. And I hope what you're getting out of listening to other great reps is that you're not alone, that this is not easy. Even when it appears easy, there's a lot that's underneath the water of that iceberg. There's years of trial and error. There's lots of practice, lots of analysis, lots of thought and planning goes into it. The kind of the best thing I've seen in the last couple of years of interviewing pretty much solely great reps. I kind of moved away from the experts. I'll still talk to them, the best of the best. But what I find from the great reps is they either have a system or they have a fantastic mindset that's usually outward focused. And people, when I say that, they don't know what I mean. And even when I say empathy and interest and curiosity, they go, yeah. But until that light goes on, when you really try and get into the other person's head, when you sit down and you go, if I was them, what would I do? How do I think through what motivates them? And people kind of give the dog, nodding its head going, like it's watching TV. A lot of these epiphanies either come through hardship or great desire to learn. And guess which is easier? That desire to learn is going to save you time. Because what's your most expensive thing? Well, time, but it's really opportunity cost, isn't it? If you could close a deal, that's a lot of income. If you can't close it or it delays, that's opportunity cost. We can't make up time, but what we can do is become better. And how do you become better? You need constructive effort. A lot of talk around the 10,000 hour rule, but if you look at it and you dissect it, say there's 2,000 working hours in a year, but how much of it is constructive practice where you're really talking to somebody else, either selling interactively or planning on selling interactively? And how much of it is admin, distraction, social media searching, procrastination, worrying, stuff that, and of course you need rest too. You need all those things. How much time are you really spending on that? And geniuses learn from other people's mistakes. Smart people learn from their own mistakes, and kind of the rest of us learn or don't learn from our mistakes. So why not be a genius and learn from other people's mistakes? If they did something and it didn't work, they might have done it wrong. They might have done it with the wrong person or the wrong way. Becoming great at sales is a practice. And too many people think it's just knowledge. You can all read the books. Everyone can read every cookbook, but you can't be a great chef. It'll make you a little bit better, might find a nuance. What does it take to become great at sales? You have to understand what great at sales means, try it, get some results, get some feedback, try it again. That is not that you're bad. That is because you're good. It is the geniuses that take that approach, not the B players. The B players assume they read the book or they took the enablement course and now I know how to sell. Well, you can pass the test of how to sell, but it's a performance. I use the analogy of comedians. For every comedian that's famous, there's probably 10 to 100, maybe 1,000 comedy writers that didn't make it on stage. And a great example of this is, because I'm a huge comedy fan, is if you go onto YouTube and you listen to some of the comedy podcasts, some of the comedy writers now have podcasts. And they're funny because they wrote the jokes for the famous people. Now, their delivery isn't as polished, and not every joke hits, but they're funny. So being funny isn't that unique. Being hilarious in front of a crowd is super unique. So that's what we are. We're the ones on stage. We're not the ones writing the sales process. We're the ones performing it. And it's that performance that matters. You could have all these great writers, and you've seen them. You know them. And they're good and you need them. Somebody's going to write the jokes. The comedian who's on stage wrote some of them, maybe most of them, but not all of them. They hire writers. And some of the writers become great comedians, or they become talk show hosts or podcasters. What we have to have is that mindset of the performer, because it gets us focused on each and every performance, not on how good the joke is. So think about that. And if you want to become great at sales and you're in B2B, you want to get great meetings, you want to be able to start conversations, not commercials. If you want to win complex sales, go to b2brevenue.com, sign up, and dedicate a year of your life to becoming great at sales, listening to other people's journeys. I mean, there's hundreds of hours of office hours, one-on-ones, examples, and they're in your space, pretty much every space imaginable. And you get to hear the transformation that the people go through, from fighting it a little, denying it, not sure about it, uncomfortable with it, all the way to success. So check it out, b2brevenue.com. Make sure you're checking out the other podcasts, Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers, the B2B Revenue Leadership Show, and the Sales Leadership Show. There's a lot of shows. We'll see you next time. about winning, eliminating your competitors, and getting the big deals done. This is for the people who really want to take their game to the next level. It pays for itself in the first deal. I bet within the first 3 months, it'll tenfold. If you really apply it over a year, it'll probably be 100x. It's up to you. How much energy and focus are you going to put into your game? Everybody wants to sit back and tell me the secret. Give me a tip. What do you do in this case? And it's like, okay, let's get into the game. You're all playing whether you admit it or not. If you sit in the bleachers and you look around, I don't know. You've got to get into the game. And the way to do it is to really see how the game is played before you get hit with the ball in the head. Most of us, we don't wake up until the soccer ball hits us in the head. You see that in the games. The kid was just standing there, boom, boom, right in the, I should do something. The natural traps that we fall into all the time in the complex sale are unavoidable. You have to prevent them, because once you're in them, repairing from them is really difficult. Winning the complex sale is a game changer, and the time to start is now. Go to b2brevenue.com, check it out. You get office hours, which is an hour meetup every other Friday. I always prepare a lesson. We talk about case studies. It's all recorded and put in the course. You never miss a thing. You get one-on-ones, 30-minute Zoom call with me, applying it to your particular situation. You get the core content, which helps you define and map out your sale. Find out where the traps are. Find out how to add direction, momentum, and control to your deals and close them. Instead of looking at it like a black box, checking in, dealing with one person, trying to understand why the CFO kicked it back, why legal isn't moving forward, how to get the board to approve it on the first go-around. We've gotten 7-figure deals through like magic with this course, and you get to hear the deal progression, get to see how they did it. What's better? And no one's judging you. No one knows who you are. No one knows what you're selling. No one cares. It's all about getting deals done, staying away from tips and tricks, and focusing on strategy. So make sure you check it out, b2brevenue.com. Make sure you listen to the other podcasts, Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers, the B2B Revenue Leadership Show, and the Sales Leadership Show, my newest show. Get enough shows? Okay. If you see my stuff on LinkedIn, please give it a little thumbs up, a little like, a little comment, a little share. I'd appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.